really trust that at the end of today, you are going to have so much hope. And we are talking about the prophets. And it's strange for me to say that, and I say that now because I'm going to be speaking about the prophet Jeremiah. How did we come about this decision as elders to speak about the prophets or to preach about the prophets? Well, we were together. We were asking God, what does God want to say? And Christoph felt, he's been reading through the prophets and he felt that we should maybe preach on the prophets. And as I always realize, when you see hindsight 2020 vision, when you look back, you realize, wow, it feels so appropriate that we would speak about the prophets, not only for Citygate at this time, but for South Africa at this time. And when I think of the prophet Jeremiah, it's like, wow, as we'll see now, is not what he was saying so relevant even for South Africa? Is South Africa now not so similar to where Israel was when Jeremiah was anointed by God to come and speak to people? And so today I'm going to speak about Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, the prophet that lamented over his nation, and this nation that was used by God to be his mouthpiece to the world, for God to reveal himself. He wanted to reveal himself to the world, so he chose the Israelites. And the Israelites, as they embraced God's ways, he blessed them. As they got closer to God, there was a blessing, so the whole world could see, wow, who is your God? Because everybody has a God. My friends, it hasn't changed. Everybody has a God. Who is your God? Your God is what shapes your life. Your God is how you make decisions every day, is based on who your God is. You might say, I have no God. I'll say, your no God is your God. You might say, I believe in evolution. Evolution is your God. Everybody has a God, and everybody in Jeremiah's time had a God, and they worshipped. But yet this God who'd saved them from Egypt, this was the big God. He was demonstrating his power through the nation of Israel. And they'd become incredibly successful. He'd rescued them out of Egypt. Egypt was the superpower for a season and a time. Then God said, no, but I am the real superpower. Let me show you the real power. And he rescued Israel. And he said, through this nation, I'm going to show you and the rest of the nations who the real God is. And so Israel had been blessed, but then they became arrogant, and then they lost their way. They became proud. And they experience decline. And so I want to say today, that's Christoph sometimes says to me, Mark, what was your point? I'm going to say it right up front. My point today is in the midst of the reality of judgment and the reality of our sins that count against us and the reality of our bad decisions and the reality of the place where we find ourselves in as people, because we are just like Israel. We have all sinned. We have all chosen different ways. In the midst and the mire, even as Jeremiah even found himself in a pit, as many of us find ourselves in the pit. You might be there. And I don't for one moment want to diminish the reality of the discipline and punishment that comes from sinning. But there's hope. There's hope for South Africa, and there's hope for you. So let's give some context with the weeping prophet. I've given some context already, but I'll repeat myself maybe a few times. But that's okay. But I want to say this. We're sitting here today, this morning, because you've made a decision this morning, but every human being needs to make this decision, is who is your God? And you're either building the kingdom of light in this world, and you're in the kingdom of light, or you're building the kingdom of darkness. And if you're building the kingdom of light, means that you've made Jesus your Lord. And what that looks like, and I'm really important here, what that looks like is if you say that Jesus is your Lord, well, Jesus is making his manifold wisdom known to the world through the church. So if you say that Jesus is your Lord and you are following him, then you should land in a local church that is preaching and worshiping Jesus. You cannot, if you say that you're a believer and you're not part of church and you're worshiping Jesus, I'm telling you, I'm not even questioning, you're not worshiping Jesus. What means when you're worshiping Jesus is you surrender to your will over his. Jesus is building his church. And his church, he is making disciples, and disciples happen in this environment where believers come together in a space where they're no longer in control, where God's in control, and he puts people together to manifest himself and to learn together. That's what it means to be in the kingdom of light. And if you're in the kingdom of darkness, it's an alternative kingdom. But I wanted to say this to you, and I wanted to demonstrate how this even happened in my life. Maybe some of you are there. And I remember and here's my first journal from the 21st of October, the year 2000. It's amazing. It's already 25 years ago. I can't believe that, because I remember when I started this. And I had a few motivational, maybe some of you getting a lot of motivational. I think I was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was reading that other guy, that philosopher. And then someone had given me these tapes, and in these tapes, the motivational speaker said, now you need to write your tombstone, what you're going to have on your tombstone. So I wrote I started my journal, and I said, this is what's going to be on my tombstone. And I'm embarrassed to even say this. Mark Slaughter. The first word, Mark Slaughter, 7361. That was my boarding school number, 7361. The greatest champion ever. Will be remembered for his remarkable tenacity, who fought. I can't even actually say this. I'll be too embarrassed. Must I keep going? Must I embarrass myself? A fierce competitor. I used to play hockey. Guys, I was fierce on the field. I would hurt people. But I said, my on-field aggression was sometimes strewed off the field by people who didn't really know my true character, which was warm and kind and compassionate. And Mark Slaughter was unwavered in his loyalty to his friends, and particularly his family. His extraordinary empire. I'm blushing. His extraordinary empire was testament to his endless enthusiasm and energy, which excelled from a foundation of honesty, integrity, blah, blah. My friends, I want to show you can come and look at this. There was a time in my life where I went and crossed out my name. I said, Jesus Christ, the greatest champion ever. And then I said, Mark Slaughter was unwavering in his loyalty to God. I crossed it out. My friends, there's a time in your life where you cross yourself out. You cross yourself out because Paul said, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. My friends, if I look at this diary of when I read through these words, I look at this, I read through it, I look at my life. This was my life. And I see here, New Year's resolutions. This is now, because you have your New Year's resolutions. The 4th of the 1st, 2002, to be a better Christian, number one. To get clarity in my relationships. Nowhere. To have a net profit of 750,000 Rand in our business at the time in Virussen. To get involved in another business. To have a six-pack. To buy a house, to win the battle against booze. These are my 7 New Year's resolutions. Now this is, there's only one year I haven't got, and there's only one. We know which one, The six-pack. But I look at this, I'm blushing because I'm reminded of what I was. I look at my diary 25 years later, I'm thinking, wow, look at this. Here's my diary, 25 years, it's the bullet journal. This has got order, it's got 7 things I do every day. It's like, wow, God has taken this mess, this spaghetti, and 25 years later, it's like, and it's not there yet, please hear me, I'm not there, but it's just, I'm looking at it, it's completely different. But have you surrendered to Jesus? Have you? But you can't play this game. This is real. This is so real. And so we have this man Jeremiah and this nation Israel that has embraced all the good things in life. And I thought to myself, because we hear about the idols and all the good things, what does that really mean? Sometimes we can read the Old Testament, we can hear these idols, they worship Baal. What does that even mean? But people say that that's no relevance to my life today. So here's what it means. It means that in that time, they took the 2 things that you do have, your resources, which might be in that agricultural economy. They had resources for agriculture. The poor people had a turtle dove and they would eat on doves. The rich people would have oxen and sheep and goats. And they would take the first fruits, and the wealthy people would have land, and then they would maybe have some grain. And this was stuff that was in their fridge. And they would take their first things. This was their resource. This is how they survived. They had that and they had time. 2 things, your resources and your time. They would take their resources and their time, and God said, now come bring them together. Let's have a big party together. We're going to share our tithes and we're going to celebrate me as you're going to give them, and we're going to pray a blessing over your crops. We're going to pray a blessing over your hands as we feast together. I'm going to pray a blessing so that we can go back to work, receive the blessing of God, come back into this place and have another big party. It's the same as our tithes and offerings. We are all earning income. We come and we give it to the church. We say every Sunday we're going to meet together. We're going to meet with God, meet with each other. We're going to love each other. We're going to learn from each other. We are going to get filled with His Spirit. But this is what happened. As they were on the way to pay their tithes, they might have had the poor people would have their turtle dove, which they were feeding on. The wealthier people might have their perfect lamb and their perfect bull that they were going to offer to God. And as they were going, they were looking up the mountain, and there were the people worshiping Baal. And how they were worshiping Baal, they were also taking sacrifices, often very similar, because the devil loves to do that. His stuff is very similar. He's an angel of light. He says, just come this way. We've also got a big party here. But in their party, they also sacrificed. It looks the same, but they're not really following the truth. And so what's really happening as you start there, you start on the outside, and there you go, there's quite a lot of drink there. Gee, these people seem to be quite drunk. They're full of alcohol. And then there's, oh wow, there's freedom here because people are just naked everywhere, and there's sexual orgies, and gee, this looks amazing. And before you know it, you're sacrificing your own children. And that's kind of where sin lands, you know. It starts all okay. Yeah, I'm just spending my money here, just a bit of gambling here. Actually, I'm just going to go to that nightclub here. In fact, I'm actually so fit. I do triathlons. My whole community is my triathlon. I take my 100,000 rand every month, and then that 10,000, I'm not going to give it to the church. I'm just going to go triathlons around the world. And look at me, I'm so fit, and that's my community. And before you know it, it sounds good, but before you know it, you're away from your wife so much. You suddenly have an affair, and you start to lose everything. And what you even sacrifice is your own children. It happens every day today. We just saw it all over the internet now with that guy, that CEO, top of his game, having an affair, so arrogant, so having an affair, and being caught by the media. One day, my friends, just let us take that as a warning. One day, every single one of us, every single thing you'll do will come before the Holy God. But it's just a lie. It's just like a deception that we go down this road that lands in death. And if you're not worshiping Jesus and you're not making his ways your ways, you get deceived into this life that sounds good, but in the end, you'll end up sacrificing your own children. Maybe not physically. I think that still happens today. These guys literally went and burned their children. And it's in this place of moral decay where that is the worst, but there is corruption everywhere. Even the priests aren't even preaching the gospel. And we even see it today. There are churches all over. And what gospel are they preaching? I don't know if it's true. It's prosperity here and this there. Even the priests are preaching the wrong stuff. The kings don't even want to know what's happening. The kings of, whether it be the northern kingdom or the southern kingdom, the kings that Israel put in place. God said, don't even have a king, but they wanted a king. But even the kings were leading everybody astray. Our leaders, aren't they doing that? You look at our leaders. Coming today onto church, the guy says he doesn't want to steal because he doesn't want to compete with the government. I thought it was quite an amusing sign. But it's like this just moral decay everywhere. And now God and Israel had gone from this nation where Solomon and David were the kings, and they had this incredible empire, and that they were at their pinnacle in the early days of Solomon. And all the nations of that time, and the nations were Egypt, and the nations were the Edomites and the Moabites and the Philistines. And then you had these nations to the north that were rising, the Assyrians. And Israel had split because Rehoboam, Solomon's son, who was unwise when he took over from his father, was very harsh with the northern tribes and created a civil war in Israel. So immediately, you see, when you start to go astray, you lose all authority, you lose all unity, and you lose all power. And immediately, because of his unwise leadership, Israel was split in two, and the northern kingdoms just were as corrupt, and even they descended faster than the southern kingdoms. And there were two tribes in the south, Judah and Benjamin, but the 10 tribes to the north were captured by the Assyrians. And in the midst of this time of Jeremiah, the Assyrian empire had grown. And this is the thing, God gives gifts to people, and his gifts are irrevocable. And I could take my Mark Slaughter and build my Mark Slaughter empire, and there are many of people that do that. They build their empires, and some of them are very talented, and they build big empires. And that hasn't stopped since the Tower of Babel. Babel was the first worldly empire that people tried to build, and it's continued to happen. The conspiracies, people continue to conspire against God. They continue to build their own empires, and God continues to dismantle them. From the time of Babel to today, any empire that tries to come against Jesus will be dismantled. And so even the Assyrians, and remember the Assyrians, if you're part of darkness, the way they lead people is by fear. And so what the Assyrians would do to assert their power is they would impale their enemies. They would take a pole and stick it right from your bottom all the way through you. It was a cruel and desperately painful way to die. And they would do that and control people by fear. The only way the kingdom of darkness can grow is by them using the resources that are in front of them. So they took people and they took land. It's totally counter to the kingdom of God, which is by faith and love, and most expressed in Jesus. When Jesus needed money to pay the taxes, he went to get it from the fish's mouth. When Jesus needed to get more bread to feed the 5,000, he just multiplied it. When Jesus needed healing, he just spoke healing, because all power, he lived from a kingdom of unlimited resource. And so this is the kingdom of light, which we are part of, has unlimited resource. The kingdom of darkness has limited resource. So the only way they can grow is by capturing you and capturing your land. And so the Assyrians, by fear, would do that. And they expanded. But there was another power that was coming to play was the Babylonians, led by this man called Nebuchadnezzar. Because these powers, these empires never last. Because thieves fall out. Even in South Africa, the thieves, like the Guptas, have fallen out. Because they were thieving. They can never build anything for a long time. It looks good for a little bit, but if you're building by fear, it'll always dismantle. Even your own life. You can be successful for a bit. You can be in the gym and looking good for a bit. But if you're not fueled by unlimited resource, it'll never last. It'll never last. And so the sovereign God looks at the space and he says, I need to speak to my people who have gone astray. And he finds, and the one who knits us together in the mother's womb. Do you know that every sperm and egg is, the biologists say every sperm and every egg is completely unique, and there's this randomized mix that goes into every sperm and every egg that makes them all completely unique. And the scientists will say it's random, and God says, I determine what chromosomes go in that sperm and the egg, and I'm now going to fashion this man Jeremiah in his mother's womb, and I'm going to anoint him to speak to these people. And Jeremiah is born in a city called Anathoth, which is a few kilometers from Jerusalem. He's part of the Benjamites. He was a part of a priestly family, and Anathoth was one of the cities of refuge, where if you killed someone by mistake, you could run to the city of refuge and be safe there so you didn't lose your life. And the Levites didn't get any land given to them like the tribes, but they were allotted pasture lands and they were allotted little villages, and there were 48 of them all over Israel, which is very interesting. And this little side note just for the citadel. In Psalm 48 it says, you will be found in my citadels. And in many ways the citadels were these pasture lands of all these villages where the priests would live, and they were actually part of the economy. They had pasture lands, they had cattle that they would pasture, and then on rotation they would come into the temple. And they would serve in the temple in Jerusalem. And Jeremiah he was in a priestly family, and so he would have been trained up in this. And he was expecting to become a priest, because that's what happened in the old days. You did what your dad did. And so he was trained up to become a priest, yet God started speaking to him and said, Jeremiah, I'm not calling you to be a priest. I'm calling you to now prophesy to this corrupt nation. As a young boy, and he's growing up, and he's got these feelings, and he's starting to have these visions as a young boy, and immediately God gives him this vision of an almond tree. Why did God give him a vision of the almond tree? Because Jeremiah he immediately would have thought, but that was Aaron's rod that budded. It was a supernatural thing. He knew he was of the lineage of Aaron, and God was saying, in the same way I made that supernaturally, that Aaron's staff bud, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be with you. In the same way I took Israel out of Egypt and gave them the land, but now I'm going to take Israel out of the good land and I'm sending them to another land. It's the same God that has authority over all things. He's the same God that's supernatural over your life. He is in control of your minute details, and he will take you and put you, and as the Bible says, he places us right today at this time. He places you right here. He places you exactly where he wants you so that the kingdom can come. Nothing's changed. And then he says, and then he gives him another picture. This is so as we look at Jeremiah, as I've been studying Jeremiah, so I'm also becoming Jeremiah, because Jeremiah is a type of Christ. Remember, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. I'm saying in these next 2 weeks, it's no longer Mark who lives, but it's Jeremiah coming out of me. And so I'm saying, God, you gave him a picture. The next picture, he says, there's a boiling pot coming from the north, and it's tilting. Massive. And so he has this picture. You remember when we stand here and we have visions, people have pictures. We must know God can speak like this. He speaks to these pictures. There's a boiling pot about to come over from the north. Who is in the north? Babylon. And he's starting to warn the people. And he says to Jeremiah, so where did Jeremiah go? He said, go to the gates. Go to the city gates. I get so encouraged by that, because in that time, that's where they would make the announcements, at the city gate. You'd go to the city gate. If that city was under attack, you would go and stand in the city and you'd announce, you'd proclaim, we are under attack. And so God says, Jeremiah, go to the city gates and tell them there's a boiling pot. It's coming from the north. Beware. The people don't want to listen. So he says, Jeremiah, now take your belt off. Take your belt off, your linen belt. Take it off. Take it off. Go and bury it at the Euphrates. And he goes and buries it in the Euphrates. Now, in those times, they had these loose garments. And the belt would, and when they had to gird up their loins, they would tuck their garment into their belt so that they could go and work. But we know, what do we hear when we hear the belt? It's the belt of truth. And what Jeremiah was saying, you've taken truth, Israel, and you've buried it in the ground, and it's become soiled. It's become all of your works are disgusting. And then I'm going to pick up that belt. disgusting belt, the belt of truth. And this is what you become with your adultery and your murder and your false prophets and your child sacrifice. Because see, some people are visual. They need to see this. They need to feel it. It's disgusting. But they still don't want to listen. So God gives him another picture. He says, look at this clay. See how I'm the potter and you're the clay. And he brings some clay and he starts molding the clay. You see, I am God that molds this whole world. I'm the one that molds you. I'm the one that shapes you. But I can only shape you if you stay full of oil. I can only shape you if you remain soft. But their hearts had become hard. My friend, that's what happens when you sin. You become so hard, you can't even hear God because you're so full of sin. So he takes another jar afterwards. He takes a jar into the wilderness, a hard clay jar, and he smashes it on the ground. See, that's what you become. You're hard. And you know when you become hard? It's so funny because God says we must be strong and not hard. And I've come from a boarding school background where you've got to be hard, or South Africa's, we rugby players, we're hard people. Do you know how fragile hard people are? Do you know how fragile they are? They walk around with these big egos and they've got big muscles and I'm so hard. And you just have to look at them straight and stand against them. They're just all fragile. You just have to say something that just impregnates their little fragile ego, and they just break. Because God says we mustn't be hard. We must be strong. We must be malleable. We must be full of the Holy Spirit, because then God can shape us and he makes us strong and he keeps working us and we get stronger and stronger, and we see Israel just these fragile. My friends, are you fragile? I want to ask you this morning, are you fragile? Are you so fragile this morning that if someone just says something about you, you can't handle it anymore, or God leaves you out of something, I can't handle it. I'm so fragile. I'm so insecure that if someone just even criticizes me, I can't, because I'm just so hard. What you actually are, your God is so small. Your God is so small. You know who your God is? It's you. That's who God is. It's you. Because your little fragile ego can't handle it. No, you can't. Because you haven't died yet. You haven't died and said, it's no longer I who live, but Christ. As Josh said, we have the righteousness of Christ. Your good deeds, my friends, will get you nowhere in the kingdom. Don't think you're going to do anything because I'm just so good. I do the 10 commandments. No, you don't. Just by saying you do the 10 commandments, you lie. And so God anoints this young man. And when he calls him, he tells him, Jeremiah, today I've made you a fortified city, an iron pillar and a bronze wall to stand against the whole land, against the kings of Judah, its officials, its priests, and the people of the land. They will fight against you, but not overcome you, for I am with you, and I will rescue you, declares the Lord. You know why God tells us these things before we do it? Because he knows that there's opposition coming. He knows that when you start to take a stand and you start to take God seriously, the devil's going to say, okay, let's see. So he tells you beforehand. He told Jeremiah, I'm giving you a message. The people aren't going to like it. You know what? They're going to try and kill you. But I've made you a fortified pillar. I've put iron down your spine. You will not, I will be with you. And when Jeremiah, and we see later, no king, which king likes the message from a young man at the city gate that beware, your sins are disgusting to God, like this belt, and there is destruction coming from the north. Which king likes to hear that? It's a bit like at the halftime team talk in a Springbok game, and you're saying, guys, these guys are so big, we're never going to win. The coach is going to say, you shush. Be quiet. No one wants to likes to hear but it's the truth. They got so arrogant. They are so hard. These kings are so consumed with their world and this that they can't even see what's happening. And it says here in the Bible, it says here, even the stork in the sky knows his appointed seasons, and the dove, the swift, and the thrush observe the time of the migration. But my people do not know the requirements of the Lord. Like Jeremiah saying, even these birds with a brain that size know when it's a time to fly. Even a bird with a brain that's smaller than your little pinky thumb knows there's time to get out of here because winter's coming. But you can't even read the seasons. Why? Because you're so consumed with your little world and your little power. My friends, next week I'm becoming Jeremiah, because I'm not going to preach about this. We have to become him. And I'm amazed in this lead up to these preachers, how I even sat with my own staff and I hear some of the corruption around. And I'm lamenting South Africa. I'm lamenting it because I'm thinking, how on earth can we stand here and see this country just be corrupted by people in power that still, even today, in the last 2 weeks, we see 60,000 rand in broad daylight being handed out of a bribe. And it's like, I don't even care. My friends, God is watching. And next week I feel I'm becoming Jeremiah. I'm becoming Jeremiah for myself. I'm becoming Jeremiah for this church. We got to become, am I? It's for all of us. It's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. It's no longer I who live, but the Jeremiah, the type of Christ that comes out of me as we meditate on him. And so the opposition comes. And Pashur and his son, Pashur's son's name, whatever his name is, one of those funny Bible names. Pashur's son, Gedaliah. Pashur's the priest. He's like the governor. He's alongside the king. And Pashur and Gedaliah, they hear these words that Jeremiah is saying, and they say, we got to shut this guy up. We got to shut this guy up. How dare he speak? And they put him into a dungeon. And they're trusting for a cruel death. They keep him alive there, but they know there's no water in there. There's no food in there, and he's going to die a slow, cruel death. But Ebed-Melech, I want to say to you, rescued him. Ebed-Melech rescued him. My friend, there will always be, when God says he's got your back, he's got your back. You might be sitting here thinking, made so many bad calls. I'm in a dungeon right now. There's an Ebed-Melech. And in this church, there are Ebed-Melechs that'll stand and say, listen, I'm gonna put some cords down to your dungeon. And if you will just hold on, we can pull you out. Zedekiah is the king at the time when Jeremiah's prophecies come true. And Nebuchadnezzar comes with the armies from Babylon, the Chaldeans, and they surround Jerusalem. And even to his death, or certainly to the death of his children, Zedekiah refuses, and the kings, his two brothers, Jehoiakim, Jehonadab, or the other brother, they were there for 6 months. Zedekiah was in charge for a bit longer. They don't want to listen to Jeremiah. Jeremiah writes a book. They don't want to listen. They burn his book. I don't want to listen to your prophecies. Even Jeremiah's life. Sometimes we say it's not only the word that God gives us, but it's the lifestyle he calls us to. They say to Jeremiah, God says, you cannot even have children. You can't have a wife and children. It's like, Lord, I can't have, yes, because you know why? Because there's destruction. The wives and the children are going to get murdered. You don't even have a wife and a children. So Jeremiah's very life became his message. When you find a wife, you find a good thing. He says, all the good things are not taken away from you, Jeremiah. You be that message. He says to Jeremiah, now buy land here. Buy land. Who's in South Africa, even in Glenwood today? Buy land in Glenwood. No, I can't buy land in Glenwood. Glenwood's not good. Buy land in Glenwood as a prophetic sign that God will come here one day. And he says one day, God gives him a prophecy. One day, 70 years later, you are going to go into captivity, but I'm bringing the people back. And Jeremiah starts to prophesy this most amazing prophecy that in 70 years' time, after they've gone into captivity, after Nebuchadnezzar have captured them and taken them to Babylon, in 70 years' time, I'm going to bring you back. I'm going to establish my kingdom. The Assyrians will be taken out by the Babylonians. The Babylonians will be taken. Then Daniel starts to pick this up. And Daniel picks up the 70 years. Daniel the prophet, we're going to hear about Daniel just later. Daniel picks up in 70 years' time, we're coming back. Then the Babylonians will be taken out by the Persians. Remember, Esther was with the Persians. The Persians will be taken out by the Romans. And then when the Romans are in power, at that point, my kingdom will come. Jesus comes, and he is the lost kingdom. There's never been an empire ever since Jesus came. There's been no empire in the world. The Roman Empire was the last empire. It was in that time, as Jeremiah said, in that time, I'm bringing the king. I'm bringing the king. Jesus is coming. The righteous branch is coming. And in the midst of these incredible prophecies, King Zedekiah and the Israelites, even after they've seen their women and children being slaughtered, because God gave them a chance, they said, if you will go to Babylon, I'll save you. But if you're going to resist my punishment, you're going to die. My friends, sometimes you're going to get punished and you've got an opportunity. Are you going to go through the process of trial and punishment so that you can be restored? And there's some people, they're so hard, they resisted it. Said, no, we will not. And even after they saw because Babylon took all the wealthy people and the talented people, and Nebuchadnezzar took all of them to Babylon. He deported them, and there were some people left. Those people that were left, and Nebuchadnezzar left Jeremiah in the land there. And then the people came to Jeremiah and said, Jeremiah, what must we do? And Jeremiah said to them, guys, listen to God, obey God, stay in the land. And you know where they went? Where did they go, Yvette? Back to Egypt. And they went back to Egypt. From the very place he'd rescued you. My friends, I don't know where you're at. I feel there's some people here today, and I want to say this. What is the message of hope? Let me give you the most amazing message of hope. Do you know this? That those people that got disciplined, those people that left their plan A, like the land of milk and honey, the land where every man had a vine and a fig tree, because that's what God wants to do with us. He wants to give you a vine and a fig tree. Why does he give you a vine and a fig tree? Because it's like as you work with God and you work with him and you have your ownership of your piece of land and you steward that land and you eat of the vine and the grapes, you have the joy of the Lord. That's what every human being wants. And they'd had this land, and they lost this land, and they were taken to Babylon. This is the grace. This is the grace of God. My friends, do you know how many people came back that 70 years? Very, very few of them. Do you know why? And this, my friends, is the message of hope this morning. Jeremiah 29. This is what the Lord Almighty is, the God of Israel, says to all those carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and settle down. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there, do not decrease. Also, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. Yes, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Do not let the prophets and diviners among you deceive you. Do not listen to the dreams you encourage them to have. They are prophesying lies to you in my name. I have not sent them, declares the Lord. This is what the Lord says. When 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my good promise to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I've banished you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place from which I carried you. My friends, do you know how many people came back? Very, very few. Do you know why? Because plan B had become so great that they didn't even need plan A anymore. My friends, I want to ask you today, you might be thinking you're living plan B. You've made some mistakes. You might have even thought you got married to the wrong person. You might have been thought, I should never be in this business. You might be thinking, I should never be in Durban right now. My friend, plan B became so good. It became so good that they didn't even want plan A. It's the sovereign hand of the Lord that says this, that I will turn all things to the good for those that love me. It's His sovereign power over your life. Where you think you've made mistakes and you think, I've made so many mistakes, He says, my friends, I'm so good, I'm so powerful that your plan B can become your plan A. And why was it His plan A? Because you're part of such a bigger thing. Do you know why God had them scattered all over the nations? Because Jesus was coming, the Romans were coming, and they were going to build the roads. And what did they need? They needed Jews all over the world that would become bases for churches, so that when Jesus came, their plan B became His plan A. My friends, can we worship? Let's worship. Because I think there are many people here and they think, I've made so many mistakes. It's all about me. I've done this. I've done that. I'm not clever enough. I'm not good enough. I'm in Glenwood. What hope do I have, my friends? If you will turn your eyes to the one who's the King and sovereign over the nations, your plan B becomes His plan A. And His plan A becomes your plan B and your plan A. I mean, He's got you. Can we do that song where we dance? I want another one. I've lost another one. I am free. My friends, I want to say this right now. By the grace of the God, you can take a decision now to face your fear and deal and actually come and just be honest with God and say, I'm going to be free. So when we dance and we worship, it's an opportunity in the spiritual realm to, by faith, declare something that you can't even feel. Like even when I was writing these things in my book, I didn't feel like it. I didn't feel free. But somehow, I just took a step of faith. And I just want to pray as we worship now that you will genuinely have this opportunity, because what was gifted to us in worship today was freedom. And it was freedom now in knowing that your plan B is His plan A. And to change your mindset that the one that determined your chromosomes in the mother's womb, my friends, God has made you exactly how He wants you. Stop being so hard on yourself. Stop thinking that you have messed up so many times. Stop thinking that your life is over and you can't change. My friends, KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, how old was that guy? 66 years old when he started a global business. I don't know where you are, but if you will come to the King of Kings now and take Him seriously and say, Lord, I want this, I want you, I want my diary and my life to go from spaghetti to chiseled, rock, solid, straight, anointed by God, living. No, have we got it all together? No, but He's got a plan for us. My friends, I can go into this diary. I just want to say this to you. I look at my bullet journal this week, not last week, not the week before, this week on Tuesday at the staff meeting. It says, you're anxious because you're distracted. These are t-shirts it seems like God gives me these t-shirt ideas at our staff meeting. My point is, this week at at the staff meeting, no vineyard has one vine. What's your vine? What's your vine? What's your wine? The point is, on Thursday night, I'm looking at Thursday night, God said, go slow. On Thursday night, I was up all night because God started showing me a vision for Peter Marisburg. On Friday night, I was up in the middle of the night because God started showing me one of the businesses that I've been part of, what He can do. My point is this, God wants to speak to you. He's got things to say to you. He's got things, He will make you so sharpened like Jeremiah that you just cut like a sword that cuts through marrow and bone. My friends, do you want it? Do you want it? Do you want it? Seriously. If you look where I was nowhere.